Welcome everyone to Meditation Mount. I'm delighted that you're able to join us. We're gathered from different parts of the world. This is one world, and in virtual space we can connect in this way. So let's begin by creating a field of communion and community together. And we do this simply by taking a few deep, gentle breaths, bringing ourselves to a point of inner stillness, and then entering the space of the heart. And inside your own heart, come into contact with the eternal flame of spirit that burns at its center. This is the fire of love, the same fire that burns at the heart of all creation. This is the love that unites us. So let's imagine ourselves around the world connected heart to heart to heart, weaving together a matrix of love. And we stand inside this group heart as our place of communion and community for this particular broadcast. Let's take a few more deep breaths to be present for this moment and for each other. Today in Ojai, California, it is Sunday, December the 5th, and 4 years ago, in the early hours of the morning, in 2017, the Thomas Fire swept through Meditation Mount and caused quite a bit of destruction, burning a building to the ground, damaging a lot of other things, scorching about 80% of our vegetation. And that particular event stopped us in our tracks, caused us to pause. It was a big shake-up. And that is the theme that we're exploring today, the big shake-up. And so it happens either through natural events, happens in society when things break down. So let's have a look at the big shake-up. What do we mean by that? So our society appears to be standing on increasingly shaky ground with every passing day. We read the news, we read what is being circulated in the media, and we see that which we could count on before for reassurance or count on for security, those things are not as rock solid as they used to be. And some of the systems are falling apart or unravelling. And the intent today is not to preach doom or gloom, but just to read the signs of what's happening and then choose how we respond in the most positive way. So let me put it in this way. Here in Southern California, we live in earthquake country. And probably many of you around the world also live in those areas that are susceptible to earthquake. And you know that at any moment the ground may move and buckle beneath your feet and cause an enormous upheaval in your lives and in the life of the community. So today we're going to explore the spiritual equivalent of this geological shake-up. Instead of an earthquake, we're going to be exploring a SoulQuake. And a SoulQuake happens when we say yes to life. And when we say yes, the soul exerts an irresistible and unrelenting pressure on our personality to make the necessary changes. So once we said, I want to live a healthier life, a more whole life, a more whatever way we express it, the soul says, okay, ready or not, here I come. The shake-up that's going on around us is a result of the consequences of our collective actions over the past decades and centuries. We're only too well aware of this. We look at the state of our environment. We look at the oceans with these great islands of plastic. We look at the polluted air and waters and earth. And we can only look at ourselves as the people that have caused it, and therefore the people who can do something about it. A shake-up happens in a natural way when the forms no longer serve the indwelling life. So, for instance, the forms we've built in our society, many of them do not do justice to the goodness, the truth, and the beauty of who we are as souls. They're sort of artificial. They're not natural systems that allow the flowering of the soul of humanity. So when I talk about breakdown, there are, of course, natural times of breakdown. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in the autumnal season, we're in fall, where the leaves turn gold and brown and fall off the trees, and some of the vegetable plants start to let go. Some of the annual flowers, they've done whatever they needed to do, and the forms go back down into the earth. They decompose, they decay, they break down naturally. So there's this natural state of chaos where all the elements, once they've served something, return to this primordial soup. And then they're called forth into a new and higher order by the note of life in the spring and the summer, and we go through this whole cycle again. And we're approaching now the winter, and the winter is when, on the outside, it looks like everything's died, but on the inside, it actually is the most alive. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, with the winter solstice approaching, it's that time when we take the lighted seeds that we want to plant in the new season. In 2022, we potentize them, we magnetize them, and we plant them deep in the earth. And this normally happens astrologically in the sign of Capricorn. In Capricorn, as the goat, we walk up the mountain, this two-horned goat, and when it gets to the top of the mountain, it's transformed into the unicorn. And the unicorn, with its one spiral horn, then can receive the light of the cosmos and then can go down from the mountaintop into the valley, bringing the light with it. So it's bringing the light into the darkness of the soil so that regeneration can take place. So when I'm talking about breakdowns, I'm not saying they're a bad thing. It depends on whether they're natural or unnatural. So I've just described a natural breakdown in nature where something has served its purpose and it returns to the earth. I believe that we're witnessing what I could call unnatural chaos, unnatural breakdown. And I say it's being caused by nefarious, willful, malevolent dismantling and undermining of structures that still serve the common good, or even by imposing structures on society that either repress our freedom or aggrandize the part over the whole. And any time that this happens, you block right circulation, you block the free flow of chi around the system, whether it be my body, your body, or the body of Earth. So the hallmark of a healthy system is right circulation of energy, free flow of energy. So what we're going to look at when we look at SoulQuake is what happens when the soul breaks up all that is blocking the flow of its power, its beauty, its goodness into the world. So when I step back and look at our world at the moment, I believe there's a tipping point that we're approaching, which will make the world a vastly different and better place if we can make that choice. And it's what I've called switching from investing our life energy into the preservation and survival of form and survival of the separated self, to investing our life energy in serving the common good. So it's a movement from selfishness to selflessness. The magical thing is that when we are selfless and serve the whole gives back to us. We don't have to go out and grab it. I think that's the lessons many of us are learning now. And that's the tipping point, because at the moment, our society is really hunter-gatherer. Those who are the strongest go out and get what they want, and they may or may not share it with others. If they share it with others, it may be at a high price, or they may withhold it because they want to have political influence. I'm not judging or condemning, I'm just observing what systems we have in place, and those systems must reflect a value. Everything that is created in form represents an ideal, a dream, something that we have inside. So now's the time when we have the breakdown of some of these old forms that do not do justice to who we are, to begin to build something new, so we have a more just and joyful world. So what we're going to be looking at is the positive and healthy breakdown caused by an act of individual will, when I, Michael, say, I choose to live the life of my soul. I choose to not have my life controlled by my addictions, my desires. I choose to be part of something greater. And when I make that declaration, something happens. It's not just an idle wish. When I do it with great intent and great focus, I actually unleash something. I unleash the power of the soul. And when the soul is invoked, it will respond. You can't say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. Put the genie back in the bottle. So we may believe that by saying yes to the soul and yes to being a better person will somehow transport us immediately into realms of carefree delight. And I think many of us know that there's often a very rude awakening after we said yes to life and want everything to be wonderful. So instead of sweetness and light, we're often presented on a plate with all the unredeemed elements of our own creation. So this is really what a SoulQuake is about. It breaks open those things that are getting in the way of the expression of the soul. So these are some of the signs, but how do we respond to a SoulQuake when it happens? Now, what I'd like to share now are 3 vital tips of what to do in a SoulQuake. And as you can see, it says 3 vital tips in an emergence. It's not a typo. It doesn't say emergency. A SoulQuake is an emergence, not an emergency. So let me read these 3, and then we'll take some time to unpack each one of them. In a SoulQuake, we don't run for cover. We stand silently in the unshakable stillness and security of the essential self. In a SoulQuake, we don't hoard or hold on. We let go of all baggage, belongings, behaviors, and beliefs that no longer serve. In a SoulQuake, we don't practice survival. We enter the fiery crucible of a deep transformative process that eventually leads to radical regeneration. So those are the 3 tips I offer, and we're going to sort of unpack them now and see what they actually might mean inside. But first of all, let's say a SoulQuake is a healthy crisis. It's a healthy crisis that marks a time of great perturbation in our lives. but it clears a space for the new soul-directed cycle to begin. And it actually guarantees that all unnecessary and outmoded parts will be either recycled, reconfigured, or refined. And in an earthquake, some buildings are reduced to rubble. So there may be some parts of our life that get reduced to rubble because they're getting in the way. So when we welcome the soul, we also have to welcome the breakdown of those things that we may have held dear and we may have placed our identity in. So it's a great process of disidentification with the outer form and a re-identification with an inner space. If we look at that first tip, in a SoulQuake, we don't run for cover. We stand silently in the unshakable stillness and security of the essential self. It simply means when all hell breaks loose around us, like a martial artist, we stand centered in the eye of the storm. And from that center, we outward move. There are a lot of things that can pull us off center. So we can practice standing in the center, and it's fine when we're doing it maybe in our own living room or our own space where we're protected, but to stand in the eye of the storm, in the real storm, is the real test. The test of knowing that the truth of who we are can never be destroyed. Its forms may be destroyed, but the truth of who we are is a permanent and essential reality. So the things that can pull us off center could be fear, it could be anxiety, it could be irritation, it could be some sort of hatred I still have for something, someone, some belief. That pulls us off center. And you know, as a child, I mean, when I went to the playground, you get on this, the merry-go-round, you go round and round and round. You get spun out more when you're on the outside, but as you move towards the inside, it becomes less frantic. So when you stand in the eye of the storm, you stand in the center of all activity, of all swirling. And then you can make whatever decision, whatever choice, whatever movement is appropriate based on right discernment. The second tip is an interesting one, and we'll probably spend some more time looking at it. It says, in a SoulQuake, we don't hoard or hold on. We let go of all baggage, belongings, behaviors, and beliefs that no longer serve. So easier said than done. So we're being asked to let go of all unnecessary possessions on all levels. These possessions could be physical objects that we possess, and if we hold on to them too tightly, they possess us. It could be emotions that possess us because we're trapped inside these patterns. It could be beliefs that we're obsessed with. That's a form of possession, obsession. There are many, many variations on this. So when I say we need to let go, I don't mean throw them away. We're not allowed to throw anything away. We're not allowed to litter. Just as you get fined for littering in a city, karma says, you can't litter, you can't throw parts of yourself away, you have to pick them up, you have to redeem them. You are responsible for bringing them to wholeness. So what I'd like to look at is, how do we recycle emotions, for instance? And by emotions, I'm talking about emotional patterns that have a hold over us. And even though in our heart we want to do something different, they still hold sway and cause us to do things that we really don't want to do at the deepest level. That's the battle we're in between the sort of the magnetic gravitational pull of patterns and the compelling call of the soul. There's this tug of war going on. And until we're free and clear of our emotional conditioning, the soul can't spread its wings. It can't fly freely. So here's a way of looking at redeeming these past patterns, of letting go of the baggage, as we say. As a gardener, I know that when the forms have completed their cycle, usually in the autumn, I put them in the compost. We just talked about composting the old forms so that the soil can be enriched for the new season. So my question is, where is the compost pile that is ready to receive all these emotional patterns, all these pains from the past, all the things that are still hanging us up? I want to give you a very simple answer, and hopefully it's not too naive. I want to say the great recycling unit is the heart. When we take something that is painful and we place it in the heart and allow it to be infused by that fire of love that burns in our heart, true love, unconditional love that has no judgment, has no blame, then it dissolves and it breaks down. One of the things I've noticed, because I spent many, many years with compost piles, I love compost. I just love the process. It's like natural alchemy. When you start off, after a few weeks, you'll find inside the compost pile all the things you put in, whether they were parts of vegetables or grass cuttings or whatever. Everything's gotten hot, everything starts to smell sour, and everything's gotten slimy. And that's the beginning of the breakdown. It's natural. So how do I know when my compost is ready? Well, it's very simple. There comes a time when I put my hand inside the compost pile, and instead of having this slimy hand when I withdraw it, I can feel this soft soil. And when I smell it, it smells sweet. So it's gone through a process from sour to sweet. And when we place the pain, the patterns, all the things from the past that we want to redeem and recycle inside the heart, the compost unit of the heart, we know that the cycle is complete when placing our hand inside what before was painful, we now can touch and we can smell the sweetness of grace and gratitude. I no longer am pulled back by regret, by an uncomfortable feeling. I can see the past with new eyes and give thanks to it because it's given me the lessons to be who I am today. So part of liberating ourselves from the past is so that we can be present. And part of placing things on the compost pile is that so we can use the old as part of the process of renewal. So each time we recycle the past and liberate ourselves, we are creating greater richness and nutrients for the soil. Now, the soil is not there just to be for itself. The soil is there to receive the seeds. And the seeds are being carried by the soul. And so it's bringing seed and soil together. So we'll explore more about what this process is, because the great shake-up, or the big shake-up that a SoulQuake puts us through, first of all breaks down that which is not needed, but then we have to construct that which is needed, and we'll explore that in a few minutes from now. So when I say let go, we talked about letting go of emotions, also our possessions. I know that a lot of people say, well, I got more things than I need. I got stuff in a storage unit. I'd really like to get rid of it, but there are memories associated with it, etc., etc. We know the narrative. And I've mentioned this before, that in order to counter that urge to collect, I became a minimalist. I just said, I'll get by on next to nothing. And then I realized that I was starving myself on some level, and I switched to becoming an essentialist. That means I possess only that which I deem to be essential for my own well-being and to support the work I do in the world, which means it could be a lot, it could be a little. It has nothing to do with quantity. It has to do that which is goal fit, that which is essential. So we may want to, when we go through this SoulQuake, have a spring cleaning. I'm being serious. We may want to go through our clothes, and if we haven't worn them for a year or if we don't want them anymore, give them to somebody else who may need them. Go through our possessions and recycle them, sell them, give them away, so that we're not encumbered. So I'm not talking about letting go of everything and walking the world in sandals in sackcloth and ashes. I'm talking about letting go of that which is not needed so that we live an essential life. So why don't we just take a moment now and do a brief composting meditation. I invite you into that space. So once again, re-enter the state of loving grace that we found inside our heart, both our individual heart and our group heart. And standing as this loving witness inside our heart, let's choose one thing that we would like to heal, to recycle, one thing that's still giving us pain. Just think of one thing. Name it inside yourself. Acknowledge that it exists. And then agree to take responsibility for it. So we're just playing, we're just practicing what it means to be a redeemer, what it means to be a spiritual composter. So whatever that is that you would like liberated, gently pick it up from the past and lovingly bring it into your heart in the presence of love, into the present. And hold it there. And know that over time, being held in love, the pain will break down. It will dissolve. And it will turn from the bitterness of the past to the sweetness of grace and gratitude. So maybe this is something you can do every now and again when these things grab you from the past, is just stop, center, and then take them one at a time. There may be too many to put it all in one. We don't want to overload the system. This is an ongoing process. And when we do it with purity of intent and purity of heart, success is guaranteed. So when we talk about letting go, probably one of the hardest things to let go of are beliefs. Because beliefs crystallize into what we believe the truth to be. We believe our beliefs to be reality. And we forget that our beliefs are simply our current interpretation of reality that we have fixed in time and space. I use the word fixed because often fixed and immovable opinions crystallize into beliefs that people can't change or won't change or do not want to change because they identify with them. What I'm going to put forward is that there is another way of having a relationship with reality beyond beliefs. For instance, you're looking at a screen now, And this screen is made up of, it's a liquid crystal display. And what I'm going to suggest is that we need to become more liquid crystal. So instead of having a belief or an idea and crystallizing it in time and space over a long period, where it then has to be broken up, that we get into this direct communion with life, this direct relationship that informs us moment by moment what's happening, and we're not attached to our beliefs in the past, but we are informed by what's happening in front of us now. And just like the liquid crystal display that you're watching now, that's so you can see me moving, I'm not fixed. Only if I freeze. And that's what happens. Our beliefs freeze and crystallize. So how do we cultivate this liquid crystal relationship with life? We can have beliefs as a framework, but when they become the refuge and become the castle and become the place where we shut ourselves off from the experience of life. So I'm not saying don't have a belief. I'm inviting us to have beliefs and step beyond the beliefs to really engage with life. Because once the big shake-up happens, it's an invitation to begin a new relationship with life, with our own self, with others, with the world around us. That's the beauty of this shake-up. Because this soul quake, it can break up crystallized patterns. It can break a heart that's encrusted with bitterness. It can release and liberate a lot of things in us. So we're talking in letting go. We're also talking about dying to what we held to be true before. And death is a theme that is not always embraced in our society. It is more so now, the art of dying, just as you have natural childbirth. Now we have natural processes of dying, and we have people that know how to guide the soul once it's died through the bardo, through the transition times, until it goes back to its place beyond the veil, where it continues to learn as the soul, before it chooses to reincarnate, to learn more, to serve more, etc., etc. So I'm thinking of the Japanese samurai, for instance. These warriors, they had a greeting, I'm told, that says, "This is a good day to die," which meant they were ready to go out and do what they had to do. I've modified that greeting because I don't want to say every day there's a good day to die. But what I'm saying now from my heart is, this is a good day to live. This is a good day to die. So that at any moment, whatever happens, whether I continue to stay in this form called Michael on earth, or whether it's time to leave, I'm ready to let go. Because then I have the freedom to act right action. And I'm thinking that when we go on journeys, we normally pack. We pack a suitcase, we pack a backpack, we pack all the things we need. In a soul quake, and when we die, we're being asked to do the opposite. We're being asked to unpack. Unpack, so we walk naked into the new. I know I'm using somewhat prosaic language, but for me it's very real. How do I strip away everything that is conditioning and stopping the true expression of who I am? How do I stand naked in front of my own sovereignty? And then how do I weave new clothes to create new garments that do justice to the splendor of the soul, to the beauty of the soul? And I'd like to get into that in a moment when I talk about the dismantling of the old house of the personality and the building of the temple of the soul. So the third tip said, in a soul quake, we don't practice survival. We enter the fiery crucible of a deep transformative process that eventually leads to a radical regeneration. I use the word radical because it's connected with the Latin root radix, root. and regeneration from the root. That means the roots are timeless. The roots of who we are go deep into spirit. What's different is each season a different expression of that timeless root issues forth. And as I've put forward, I believe it's the fire of love that lives in our heart that truly transforms us and transforms relations with other people. So these are some of the practices and process we can go through on the soul journey. So it's one thing to have a breakdown of forms inside our personal life, but what happens when there is a major breakdown of many of those vital systems within our society that keeps things flowing and circulating? I think many of us have noticed the whole thing of the global supply chain. We talk about the big shake-up. Well, it's affecting the global supply chain. I know when I spoke to the plumber that came to fix something a couple of months ago, he said one of his machines broke down. It's going to take 7 weeks for the new part to come. The way my barometer for measuring the global supply chain, it may seem a little trivial, but the local supermarket in Ojai has an English section, English produce, Heinz baked beans and McVitie's digestive biscuits and this and that, all the things that these expats believe are essential to life. Tea. I've noticed for the past 3 weeks, the shelves have been empty. I haven't been able to buy my digestive biscuits. So in the morning, I'm robbed of my biscuits. So that's a very trivial, but it just caused me to think, well, these biscuits were baked in Britain. All the energy it took to bring them here to Southern California so that Michael could have memories of childhood of having a digestive biscuit with his cup of tea in the morning. I use this to illustrate how some of the things that give us comfort and ease and security may no longer be there. So it's one thing when the global supply chain breaks down. What about global communications? What do we do if and when the internet goes down or is out sporadically? So my answer is practice telepathy. And what I'd like to do in about a minute is to show you some descriptions of the different forms of telepathy from a book written by Alice Bailey called Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle. I would highly recommend this book. It's not a thick book, it's a thin book, and it contains a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight. And the reason it's important now is we're talking about we are interconnected. How do we honor and remain connected when what we've relied on for so many years now may not be available? The intuitive connection between people that we know as telepathy is the natural internet. The internet that we use now is just the externalization of that. So let me just read to you what it says here. As I say, this is taken from Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle by Alice Bailey, published by the Lucis Trust, and it's one of the books that I find very valuable. Telepathic work, this is the first, I'm going to give you 6 different types of telepathy. 1. Telepathic work from solar plexus to solar plexus is closely connected with feeling, and little or no thought is involved. It concerns emotions, fear, hate, disgust, love, desire, and many other purely astral reactions. It is carried on instinctively and below the diaphragm. This is just a fact, it's not a judgment. Second form of telepathy, telepathic work from mind to mind. This is beginning to be possible, and many more people are capable of this kind of communication than is now realized. People today do not know whence various mental impressions come, and this greatly enhances the complexity of life at this time and increases the mental problem of thousands. Suddenly we're getting all We're getting all these transmissions. We're picking up stuff. What's happening? Am I going crazy? 3, telepathic work from heart to heart. This type of impression is the sublimation of the feeling response registered earlier upon the ladder of evolution in the solar plexus. So heart to heart is the higher correspondence of solar plexus to solar plexus, because the heart corresponds to the intuitive plane, which is the higher correspondence to the astral or the emotional plane. Number 4, telepathic work from soul to soul is the highest possible type of work. When we begin as a soul to respond to other souls and their impressions, then we are rapidly becoming ready for processes which lead to initiation. Initiation simply means a greater capacity to do the will of God. It doesn't mean somehow we're going to get a Boy Scout badge or we're going to wear a laurel wreath. Initiation simply means we now have the greater capacity to serve more. It means you're going to get more to do. 5th, telepathic work between soul and mind. This is the technique whereby the mind is held steady in the light and then becomes aware of the content of the soul's consciousness and innate content, or that which is part of the group life of the soul on its own level. And when in telepathic communication with other souls, this is the true meaning of intuitional telepathy. So this is when the mind has access, goes online to the soul. That's what meditation is. It's going online to the soul. We go online now. We're online now on this broadcast. But meditation and telepathy is how do you go online to that deep source of identity, that deep source of wisdom. And finally, 6, telepathic work between soul, mind, and brain. In this stage, the mind still remains the recipient of impression from the soul, but in its turn, it becomes a transmitting agent or communicator. The impressions received from the soul and the intuitions register as coming from the spiritual triad, that's the higher fire of spirit, via the soul are now formulated into thoughts, the vague ideas and the vision hitherto unexpressed. They can now be clothed in form and sent out as embodied thought forms to the brain of the disciple, to the brain of humankind. And this is what we practice here at Meditation Mound. It's the cultivation and the creation of the spiritual architecture of the new. How do we build the new? And how do we then send out those projections into the ethers? So how do we practice telepathy? Those were 6 particular versions, and they seem complex. And as I say, I recommend reading the book. But let's try something extremely simple. We could play with it now, but it's really serious fun. Just as you probably have on your phone a contact list. And some people have got it voice enabled, so you can say, call so-and-so, and you speak their name, and suddenly you're connected with them on the phone. I'm going to suggest a similar process can be done with telepathy. I'm proposing that we set up our own telepathic network, our own contact list, etheric contact list. And here's a simple way of doing it. And we're going to be practicing this in a minute, or at least I'm going to invite you to do this. For instance, if you want to contact somebody, start by imagining that person in your heart. Tune into their frequency, because this is their signature tune, this is their number. Remember, numbers in space are geometry, numbers in time are music, or the signature tune of the soul. So just as we have a phone number, so we have our own musical signature. And when you register the vibration and the signature, the frequency of this other person, imagine you're pressing save and you add them to your etheric contact list. Now they're saved. You've impressed their frequency on you. You won't forget it. It's not like forgetting a number. It's saved. So you can practice setting up a contact list with friends, family, colleagues, And these can be people, any part of the world, because telepathy works across distance. I believe it may be useful to start practicing this, because when the internet is down, what are we going to do? There are people who are ham radio operators, but there are other people who say, wow, the current internet is simply the outer form of the telepathic capacity that each of us has. So let's start developing it. Let's start developing our capacity to be in resonant relationship with each other at this more refined level. So why don't we try it now, just for fun? Think of a person that you'd like to contact now. Allow their image, their aura, their being to present itself to you. Allow their frequency to impress itself on you, so you register their frequency, you get their number, and then choose to save it. That person is now in your contact list. Now let's do a test message. Send out a message of love or kindness or whatever along those lines to this person. Simply from your combined heart and mind, send a message out to this person from this newly established contact list. And see it being received. See the other person registering it, getting the message. And then let go. You only need to call once. So it may be that the person you just sent something to, who knows, they may call you and say, do you know what, I was just thinking of you yesterday. It's very strange, I haven't thought of you for months. I'm not saying it will happen, but I think many of us have found that, oh my gosh, I just thought of you and you just called me. It's happening more frequently. And when I lived at Findhorn in the community there in northern Scotland, because we were in close rapport with each other on different levels, it would happen quite frequently that the person you were thinking of, you turn the corner and there they were. So I'm saying that this is a realistic proposition for communication. So setting up your own contact list. Now you may ask me, well, what about groups? I'm part of a number of groups. Okay, here's how you set up an etheric group contact list. I've just made this up, but it may be true, it doesn't matter. So if you're part of a group, tune into the group now, tune into the group soul, tune into the group signature, its symbol. Is there a symbol, a shape, a color, a frequency, something that represents this group that you're part of? And when that comes to mind, when that comes to heart, place all the people in the group inside that symbol and then click save. That's how you set up a group list. And what I'm suggesting as well is keep the airwaves open, because it isn't just, you don't just turn your phone on when you want to send somebody a message. You turn your phone on because you want to receive things as well. So we're setting up a network where we can transmit, we can receive, we can register, we can transmit, we can be in communication, because at the deepest level on the etheric plane, we are connected already. We're part of this loving matrix. We're part of this seamless web of life that is always in touch with it. You've read the books now about how the roots of the trees communicate, how the fungi, the mushrooms, and the whole fibrous network below the soil communicates and is in touch with each other. Everything is in touch with everything. It's just that we've disconnected ourselves and we're relying on external means. So this is one way of getting back in touch. So you may think, well, that was a little trivial, but I'm being serious. There's some truth in what I may say, many a true word is spoken in jest. So let's look at when life shakes us up and the house that we were living in begins to crumble. We need to rebuild the house. Now, maybe we've attempted to build a personality dream house on shifting sands when we're now being asked to build a more like a temple on solid rock of values. I'm thinking of one of my heroes, St. Francis. I mean, what a life he lived. He lived a pretty, outward going and wild early life. And then he had this shift, this inner shift. His life was restructured. His life was broken down. So he had the dream life of a personality. He had everything he wanted on the physical plane, and then he gave it all up. And he heard this voice, build my church. If you've ever read the story of St. Francis, build my church. Now, St. Francis took this literally and thought, all right, I've got to go rebuild this church that's fallen down. So stone by stone, he rebuilt this physical church. And the overriding soul said, actually, we didn't mean the physical church. We meant rebuild the church, the body of the church, rebuild the substance, the temple, the values that Christ represents. When I say rebuild the church, I mean breathe new life into the message. And when he got that, he just went walkabout. He went on a pilgrimage. So what I'm saying is that when we leave the home that was comfortable for us and served us, and we're being asked to build a new home after the big shake-up, then we have to look at what are the requirements, what are the specifications? And we have to look to the soul for the specifications. So this is the work of day by day building a temple, not a temple where we go worship something, but a temple which means a sacred space that does justice to the truth, goodness, and beauty that is at the core of who we are, our essential nature. So I go back to the big shake-up. We look around the world, there are a lot of ugly things happening. There are a lot that is falling down, there's a lot of pain. So we have to do these two things. We have to hold the pain, we have to provide solace, support. So why are we going through this particular period as a humanity at the moment? I believe that we're passing through our own shadow. We are coming face to face with the world shadow, which is being created, as it says here. The world is now passing through its own shadow. The darkness represents the sum total of all the unresolved thoughts and actions of humanity. It's crunch time. Now, maybe the shadow is so overwhelming that we can't redeem it in time. I believe that we have the power to redeem it. We do have the power when we start to build the house of the soul, when we start to rebuild from the inside out. So what is our role? What are we here to do? What does it mean to serve? So this next image, once again, it's a little naive. As I've said before, these are taken from a workshop series I helped create in 1975 at Findhorn. So is our task to patch up the old or to help the new grow and flourish? Well, it's a bit of both. By patching up the old, I don't mean preserving the form, I mean healing the old wounds, but not to keep the old systems in place if they no longer serve. Let them die gracefully. So in the 5 minutes that we've got remaining, let's return. So we are part at the moment of a big planetary shake-up. There are astrological conjunctions going on. We've just gone through a solar eclipse. We're just about to go through another conjunction where there's a big shake-up involving the planets that help us move through these things. So I'd like just to repeat if you just want to close your eyes, let me repeat the 3 tips for a soul quake. In a soul quake, we don't run for cover. We stand silently in the unshakable stillness and security of the essential self. In a soul quake, we don't hoard or hold on. We let go of all baggage, belongings, behaviors, and beliefs that no longer serve. In a soul quake, we don't practice survival. We enter the fiery crucible of a deep transformative process that eventually leads to a radical regeneration. So after the big shake-up comes a dynamic period of regeneration of self and society. So as the old world is falling apart, we have to put in place the new. We're builders of the new. We're here as portals through which the new can enter. So the final image for today is, how do we become points, seed points of creativity? Let me just read this. Points of entry on earth through which genius can flow are those groups and individuals who are open to meet a need and through the quality of their lives act as magnetic seed points and points of demonstration. So let's bring our time to completion now. And take a deep breath. My sense, without being alarmist, is in the next couple of months, the world's going to look a lot different. However, the essential self, the soul, remains immovable, remains standing at the eye of the storm. And it's in that center that we need to stand in order to be able to move through the changes, but also to be of use and be of service to others who may be spinning around, so that we become a point of stillness, a point of inspiration, a point of encouragement. So let's end by going back inside the group heart that we've created, taking a deep breath and holding the present world situation inside our heart, holding it in deep, unconditional love. And we know that this love is the true redeeming force, the true transformative force. And let us imagine, as we hold the world, these points of pain from the past are released. And another spark of joy is generated, so that over time we are regenerated, we are renewed as one humanity. And as we normally do, whatever we've received, we give thanks for, and we send it out as a blessing. So we're going to send out 3 waves of love on 3 soundings of the Tibetan bowl. And with each sounding, just send out from our group heart a wave of unconditional love that will lighten the load of our sisters and brothers in the world, and that will bless all creatures and all things, both visible and invisible. So take a deep breath, and from the heart, send out the first wave of love. Take another breath and feel the love that is filled in your heart, and breathe it out to the world as a blessing. And on the third wave, let us see this wave of love enter the very atoms of the earth, allowing the big shake-up to result in the creation of a brighter, a more joyful, and a more just future for all beings. Thank you. That's a lot to digest. It was a pretty strong title, The Big Shake-Up, but I believe that's what all of us are experiencing to some degree. And if you don't realize that the true shake-up is when the soul starts to rearrange its outer life to correspond to its inner life, if that isn't the shake-up that's happening, then you're going to get thrown around by the outer circumstances of life. So our task today, and our task tomorrow and in the days ahead, is to build this new together and to build a society built on the bedrock of spiritual values, not on the shifting sands of personality desires. It's a tall order. It could take hundreds or thousands of years, but unless we begin now, it will never happen. So thank you for your presence and your participation. And let's keep breathing gently together from the heart as we move into this next period of transition on our planet. Thank you, and good night and goodbye from Meditation Mount. Blessings.